curious about like how does the multilingual brain difference from the monolingual brain in that in things?
Hmm. That's another good question. So, um, it depends on what part of the brain you're looking at when you start learning the language, how proficient you are. There are a lot of variables that come into play, and it's still not 100% clear which variables are
Yeah.
important. But the general picture seems to be that so for most people, there are two major language centers that people talk about. Language is really done like all over the brain.
Hmm. Oh, it's all over.
Yeah, especially when you're talking about meanings. So meanings of words and things, those activate areas all over the brain.
Hmm.
Um, but there are at least two major hubs of activity
Mhm.
that kind of connect to these other areas. And that's Broca's area and Wernicke's area. And Wernicke's area might be a hub for like semantic processing, but it's also involved in other stuff. So when I say it's involved in semantic processing, that's like a really old and basic theory of it, and it's way more complicated than that. But we'll just stick with that for now.
Yeah.
And then Broca's is in like a hub for syntactic stuff, grammatical things.
Mm.
And again, it's way more complicated than
Sure.
that. Um, and what people have found is that if you learn two languages as a kid
Mhm.
and you become highly proficient in both of them, then those two languages activate the exact same area, or there's overlapping uh, activation for both languages in both of those two areas.
Sure.
But if you learn a second language as an adult,
Mhm.
what the original studies have found is that there's overlap still in the meaning section in Wernicke's area, but Broca's area, there's non-overlapping activation. So it's still in that same small part of the brain,
Hmm.
but they don't overlap.
Huh.
And so you treat them as more distinct, as if you, well, maybe not more distinct, because any kid who learns two languages can tell the two languages apart.
Sure.
But the resources that you use in your brain are shared if you learn them
Uh,
younger.
It,
Now, real quick. Sorry. Sorry. Um, I say when you learn them older, there's more recent research that says that it may not actually be age that matters, but proficiency. And kids learning both languages tend to be proficient in both, and adults tend to be less proficient in their second language. So it could be that when you become more proficient, then you start sharing resources more.
oh,
huh.
Yeah.
okay, okay.
Okay. That's all. Go ahead.
I was gonna ask about like in I normally say because we Sophie and I we've debated we debated a long time. What does it mean to be a native, to be fluent? And this whole thing.
Sure.
It's kind of like we talked to Dr. Stanley yesterday. Dialectology, people have no idea what it is. People are not aware, and it's the same thing as fluency
Mm.
that people are not aware. Like we talked to Dr. Cox about this,
Yeah.
how people define fluency and how native speaker is not a good indicator of fluency.
Right.
And what I'm when it comes to that kind of thing in the brain, like for me, for example, I know Portuguese isn't natively. For me to transfer, it's very easy. It is easy for me to transfer all the knowledge of Portuguese I have to Spanish
Mm.
or Galician. So like the would it if like learning Spanish for over a year, would it light up to as well?
Probably you would, I would guess, have a lot
Yeah.
of overlapping
Yes, of
activations.
course.
But we'd have to do an MRI
Of course.
to know for sure. But that would be my guess that there'd be a lot of overlap for you. One, because the languages are so similar, so you can transfer a lot of knowledge.
Mhm.
But also because if you get proficient in Spanish, then it's likely to overlap. And there are other studies that look not just at where things are happening,
Mhm.
but in the types of processes your brain is
Oh,
doing
sure.
that also show that when you're not super proficient, you use different processing strategies than when you become more proficient.
Huh. What?
Oh, that's cool.
So not super clear yet what they are, the strategies are, but one thing I talked about the N400,
Mhm.
Mhm.
that it's sensitive to lexical access stuff. For early second language learners, you get a lot more people that have an N400 also to grammatical errors.
Uh-huh.
So they're like
Mm.
noticing the error, but they notice it and get an N400, which may be because they're treating it as just something I haven't seen before. It's
Mhm.
an unrecognized pattern.
Uh-huh.
And so you get an N400. For many native speakers, and I say many because there are some native speakers who also get an N400 to grammatical errors, but it's more common to get a P600, which is a different brain response that is maybe sensitive to like reanalysis type stuff.
Okay.
Um, and so for many native speakers, and we can talk more about what a native speaker means.
Okay.
Um, they have this P600 response, and a lot of recent-ish research in the past like 5-10 years has shown this progression where people start with an N400 in their second language and then move to a P600 as they become more proficient. And that doesn't have to take
Right.
too long.
Right.
It can be even just after a year or 2 of study
Hmm.
that people move to a P600,
Hmm.
but also showing the effects of proficiency on how you process stuff in your brain.
Wow.